Alayka ya Abu Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ibn Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Muharram Special with your host, Sister Zinat. In the studio today, we have Alima Maryam MIDL from United States of America. Assalamu alaikum, sister. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much, sister.
So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Muharram Special. I am an American Iranian and I from LA. I finished my bachelor's degree in accounting and business, and I taught at an Islamic school for a bit and then moved to QOM. I've been studying here for several past years. I finished my bachelor's degree and I'm working on my master's degree in Islamic philosophy.
Thank you so much, sister, for being part of the studio and the show. So, in the last episode, we were discussing about what do we learn from the event of Karbala, from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And there were a few beautiful points that you have already mentioned. The first one, being punctual in your salat, no matter what, where you are, whether you are in a war zone or a business or your work. Second point is the love, the kindness that you give to each other. You know, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam has given to the people around him, that people joined him with their own love and compassionate, you know. And the third point you said, your
Selflessness.
Selflessness. So how he taught people how to be selflessness, you know. So we will be continuing with the fourth point.
Yes,
so what are the other points do we have?
Just so I can summarize it.
Yes, please.
The fourth point is being successful doesn't always show on the surface. And I'll delve into them hopefully inshallah after
Yeah, that's
I name them.
interesting.
Sabr, having patience. Being faithful, standing up against the oppressors, and tawakkul to Allah, like
Believe in Allah,
trusting Allah, having reliance on Him. And the last one is dignity and honor is in humility.
Wow.
So inshallah we'll get into each and every one point. So the fourth one, as I said, was being successful doesn't always show on the surface. So if you look at, like, I think this is something we all know, is that when you look at the story of Imam Hussein, on the surface, he lost the battle. On the surface, he lost his family. He lost his children. He lost Ali Akbar. He lost Ali Asghar. He lost his own life. He lost his companions. It's all lose-lose. Like,
Yes.
if anyone looks at on the surface, they're like, well, Imam Hussein lost. Yazid won. He achieved what he wanted. But when you look into, you step a little bit deeper, you realize no. In terms of the akhirah, Yazid lost. He's going to be in hellfire, right? Or he is in hellfire, let's just say. And even in terms of the khilafat, it was only shortly won until like he lost it shortly after.
Yes.
So, and I think this is really important because we who live, especially for us who live in the West, usually we define success as in material possessions and material successes,
definitely.
and winning the battle, into gaining material gains in whatever we're doing, reaching that goal. And that's good that we should have a goal, we should try to achieve it, but it doesn't always mean that we will achieve that.
Yeah, but usually the term success means if you have a lot of money, you've got the property, if you got the name and the fame, and you're like dying, leaving a lot of property, oh my God, that person was a very successful man.
Yeah.
But just in case, even that person, like if he loses house or mortgages and loses his job, there are people who commit suicide because they feel they are losers, right? They don't feel they are successful anymore. So this is the terminology of success in 21st century. But Imam Hussein is giving some other meaning to success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like we can't just, it teaches us to kind of look past the apparent world and look into it in a deeper way. And right now, especially if you look in, like with technology especially, like these big companies, right? And the people who they start them up and they end up gaining like millions of dollars or become billionaires. Like right now we coin them as, oh, these are successful. How can we become like them? What should we do? And yes, in that aspect, yes, they have gained that material, and that in itself is respectable. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but in the sense that, like, for a believer, we should try our best to acquire money and acquire wealth, for sure. Like, I mean, if you look at even the life of Imam Ali, he did a lot, like even from a material perspective, like he basically farmed so many palm trees. He established
Yes.
wells. He did a lot. Like when it comes down to, if you look at the work he actually did on a material aspect, he did a lot. Even the other imams, like they were very hard workers. Khadija was a wealthy woman.
Yes.
So it obviously, we're not saying don't go for worldly positions.
Just sit
but
home, do nothing.
do
No,
nothing.
you're not
Obviously,
saying
you're
that.
not
Yeah.
saying that. But it also means that even if let's say you have a goal and you try to achieve that in the material world and you're not able to, it doesn't mean you've lost. And I think that's really important, because sometimes, especially in the world we're living in, like the economy isn't going, like most places, it's very difficult right now. A lot of people have lost their jobs because of COVID-19. So it hasn't been easy. And this is for everyone right now. Like most people are struggling to make ends meet. And so just because you're struggling doesn't mean that it's your fault. And it doesn't mean that you're a loser. Because at the end of the day, Allah is still rewarding you for the hard work you are putting in there. And so if you're still achieving something with Allah, then that means you're still successful. And I think that's really important, so that we don't lose hope, especially in these hard times.
Yes.
And again, it's important to realize, like for a mu'min, their reward will be with Allah. As much as they struggle here, their main reward is in the akhirah. And so that's why we have to define success based on our akhirah, not our dunya. Like we have to learn from Imam Hussein. So the next point is hardships and tragedies aren't necessarily bad. So if you look at, on the day of Ashura, Imam Hussein, he was, as the day passed, as time passed, we know that we've heard from the narrations that he seemed to become more happy as the day passed, as he lost more people, as he lost his son, as he actually became happier, and people were seeing that. And it's interesting, because it's like, well, why would Imam Hussein be in such a state? And it's because the more and more hardships he was going through, he was getting closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that just shows that he's growing. And it's the same thing with us, for like believers. The more you struggle, you can get closer to Allah. I mean, if you use it in the right way, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point. And when you look at Hazrat Zainab, what's her famous line that she said?
All she saw was beauty.
Yeah, وَمَا رَأَيْتُ إِلَّا
Exact.
جَمِيلًا. I have not seen anything but beauty.
Beauty.
And so when you think about it, you're just like, wait, how is she saying that?
Yeah.
I mean, she lost her brother. She lost, like, her nieces.
Sons.
She lost so, like, and when you lose someone, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually lose someone. I don't know, have you ever lost a close one?
Closer person, and then you get into depression.
Typically
You're depressed. People say that they are depressed. They never say that all I've seen is beauty. They never say that.
Yeah, people don't usually say that.
Yeah.
And have you ever lost a close one?
Close one, yes.
And how did it feel?
It feels very sad, It's very, you feel lonely. You feel like it's heartbreaking, it's depressing, but definitely you don't use the words, all I've seen is beauty.
Definitely. So, Hazrat Zainab's able to say this because she really saw it that way.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. Sometimes we think that the Ahlul Bayt are saying something just like the same way we're saying something. Sometimes we learn something. We learn something on the internet and we're just saying it. But they actually, when they were saying it, they actually meant it.
Yeah.
They really mean it. They've actually seen it with their heart. They've actually, they're embodied what they're saying. So they're coming from a different perspective. They're coming from yaqeen, from conviction.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing. Like Hazrat Zainab saying this, she's like, no, this is beauty. This is like, I'm closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It's interesting because, the hardship is a part of our life. The difficulties, life is supposed to be difficult. Marriage is supposed to be difficult. Bringing up the kids is supposed to be very difficult, it's very challenging. But when we face hardship, usually we really get, tired, very unhappy, kind of depressed and angry, It says, why do I have to face all these things? Why do I have to lose my job? Why do I have to lose my health or wealth, It comes as a part of complaining, but they are not really complaining. What Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayha, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, what they said, that they are praising it. They are saying it, all I've seen is beauty. So basically they are telling us hardship is part of life. And you can bear the hardship.
Yeah.
Definitely. So it's a very beautiful example. One of the points you said is hardship. So it's a part of every single day of our life that we should be able to take this hardship because we have the tolerance, we have the patience to do that.
Definitely. And so we have the verse of the Quran, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي الْكَبَدِ, like that we have created human beings in hardship.
Yeah.
It's the verse of the Quran. So this aspect to hardship isn't something that is just for the believers. It's also for the non-believers. Well, they also, all humans will go through hardships. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are. It's just the sunnah of Allah. It's the way that Allah's created the world, is that we're going to go through ups and downs, and that's normal. And no one can say, oh, I've never gone through any hardship. That doesn't exist. Even if someone's like a billionaire, they're still going through hardships. They're going through, and a lot of times, like if you look online and you like look at these interviews that some of these Hollywood stars, or I don't know, maybe singers, or if you look at like the interviews that they do, and you see sometimes you'll find them they're not happy.
Yeah.
That they're also struggling, that they're also going through ups and downs.
Everyone is struggling.
Definitely. And so, but the point of it is to grow and to get closer to Allah and to become, to change. I remember when I was at Hajj, I remember I was sitting next to one of my friends, and she said something interesting. She said that we're like this clay under Allah's hands, and He's molding us to be in a certain way. So when you're trying to mold something, it's going to hurt. Like it's going to hurt that thing that's under the hand of that which is being that's being molded into. So it's going to be painful and it's going to hurt. But the outcome is that you become a different person.
But you are in Allah's hand again.
But you're in Allah's hand.
Yeah.
He's the one who's planning it.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you see it that Allah's the one who's planning it, He's the one who's destined these things for you, it immediately becomes easier. Because you're like, okay, He's the one who's doing this to me, and He knows what's best for me. Versus if you don't believe in Allah, if you don't have that iman, you don't have that conviction, it's like, why is this happening to me? Why me? People say that sometimes.
Yes,
why
yes.
me? They're so like, it's always like the scene in the movie when the character's like, why me?
Yeah.
Why? Like, and they're angry and they're upset, and it's like it's like you see that scene sometimes in these movies, and it's like, no, there's a reason why. And there's a reason why you're going through that particular hardship. Everyone has to go through a particular hardship. It's meant for you specifically. And interestingly, like, so for me, in terms of my story, like I lost my brother. And so in that, when I went through that, it broke me to pieces. Like when I look back onto those days that we found out he passed away and then we buried him, like especially that first year was the hardest days of my life. And going through that, it's like you're crushed, your ego's like just there's no ego left anymore. You're just broken. And it's when you lose, especially a loved one, I think it's one of the hardest things a person can go through.
Losing your brother, especially your parents losing their son, is the more hardest thing, because they lost someone who was 19 years old. And they had so much expectations, you know.
Yeah, you have the expectation of seeing him getting
married and having kids.
So there's all these things. I remember my mom would, like that day after, she was, like when she was preparing like the cloth and all this, and she's like, I'm preparing my son's
funeral.
Not funeral. He was saying his clothes to become married, and like in her mind, she was going through all of that stuff.
All of that.
And it was just, we were all broken inside. But what I realized going through that was that we've all changed. And I can say personally, when you're crushed to that point, it makes you more empathetic for other people. It makes you kinder to other people because you've been through something so difficult, and everyone's going through something difficult. People don't talk about it. People don't post like their difficulties, usually, not always, but on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Usually people talk about
the happy phase,
right? Although I have to say right now, because everyone's going through hardships, I think people are more open about it because we're all going through the same thing right now with not being able to socialize and whatnot. But for the most part, people just show those pictures, but it doesn't really represent what they're going through on a daily basis. And so it's kind of sad because then people think, oh, look at that person's life. but they're just looking at the surface.
Yeah, we're not even, that is just a presentation, a little bit of happiness the person is going through,
Yeah.
is sharing with us, but there's a lot the person is going from inside. Because Allah said in the Holy Quran, right, He's going to test everyone, and life is supposed to be difficult for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And so for me, when after my brother passed away, I think one of the hardest times was always Muharram, because whenever they would say the story of Hazrat Zainab and Imam Hussein, it just would break me. I think the first few years I wasn't able to really listen to it properly because it would tear me up. And I never felt like that before, because then I understood what it means to actually lose a brother. And you don't really understand how difficult Karbala was because we weren't there. Like, as much as we hear the story, it's one thing to hear the story, to see a movie, but to actually be in someone else's shoes is two different things.
And lose your family.
And lose your family. But then just that part that I was able to actually feel, losing, knowing what it means to lose a brother, knowing how hard it is, it became so difficult for me to hear this, and it just was like one part that I could say, like, that maybe I really understood of how difficult Karbala is. And you realize, wow, the Imam had so much faith and so much conviction, so much iman and so much yaqeen that he was able to endure that, and how much Zainab had so much faith that she was able to get through it and be so strong and still stand up, facing Yazid, facing Ibn Ziyad, and being so brave and bold and standing up to them. And you see it's because of that. It's because of the faith that they have. Yet it's still, even that hardship for them was a mercy by Allah. It's a mercy. And so that's the thing. When we're looking at hardships, we also have to be cognizant of, hey, this is also a blessing. This is also a way where we can get closer to Allah. And see it as an opportunity versus just saying, oh, this is difficult. This is hard. Why me? No. Change your perspective, change your lens, see it in this way. Well, this is happening to me because Allah wants me to go through this, and inshallah I'm going to become stronger. I'm going to grow in some way. Maybe I don't know how, but I would know, inshallah I will, because Allah will not will anything for a mu'min other that it is good.
Instead of getting depressed and going down in your life, take it very positively, become stronger, and take a lesson out of it, because who's handling everything? God is handling, and God really loves you.
Definitely.
He's merciful towards us the whole time. So this would be like the best example to make us stronger than before.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's changing that lens, and then seeing as an opportunity to grow and looking at it as a challenge. So and I've tried this. If you change your lens, and rather than saying, okay, this is hard, how am I going to do this? No, look at it, we're like, this is an opportunity. I'm going to grow from this. The same way, like when people want to play a game, or they want to play a video game, they're not, oh, this is a hard video game. No, I mean, I was never a fan of video games, but I imagine when people want to play, they're like, oh, I want to win. This is going to be fun. They pump themselves about it. They enjoy it. If you're playing basketball, badminton, whatever it is, if it's soccer, people usually are excited when they play the sports, right? And so we see with athletes, they want to play. They enjoy the challenge. They don't see like, oh my God, this is a challenge, I don't want to play. No, they're like, oh, I want to play. And even if they lose, they're like, okay, next time I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna be better, and I'm gonna win. I'm gonna go for that Olympic gold
You're gonna
medal.
lose. I'm gonna win.
I'm gonna win. And so if we change our attitude to have this perspective, it changes the game.
To take the hardship positively instead of negatively.
Yeah. And so so Babe Ruth, he's a baseball player, and he has this famous quote: "Don't let the fear of striking out stop you from playing the game." I think it's something along those lines. And it's such a beautiful quote, and it's just like, it's so applicable to our daily lives. We're like, we shouldn't let the fear of losing, the fear of failing to stop us from keep on playing the game, being in life, taking on the challenges. Even if you lose, even let's say you're unsuccessful or whatever it is, you learn something and then you might, from those losses, supposed losses, you will grow from it in some way, and you will be able to do better next time in some other area in your life. And so it's an opportunity. In some way, it becomes a spring for you to grow in another area, to be successful somewhere else, right? And even if it's not in this world, even let's say you have a goal. Let's say we have a HOSA student who studies, and mind you, this actually has happened in the past, where they study, they have this goal to become a scholar, yet they're not successful. there's like a story of a person who this happened to him, and what happened was that he passed away, and someone had seen
He
a
passed
dream.
away.
He passed away,
Yeah.
and someone saw a dream of him. With that, they saw a dream of him being in the presence of one of the imams, and he
Wow.
was learning from the imam.
Wow.
So it didn't happen here, but it happened for him in the akhirah.
Because he was unable to become a
he
scholar.
wasn't able to
in this
use
world.
the world, but Allah gave him success in the akhirah.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
even if you don't achieve everything that's here, it's in the akhirah. And the akhirah, it's important to also note that when we talk about the akhirah, it doesn't mean it's tomorrow. It doesn't mean to say that it's actually, technically it's incorrect. The akhirah is happening now. And it's happening if someone's in paradise, if someone's achieving paradise, doing good things, they are in paradise at the moment. It's not something that happens tomorrow. No, that person will feel it in a sense.
Yeah.
I don't know how to. It's hard to explain, but
Yes, yes. I do understand what you're trying to say is that, whatever you're doing for the sake of God, Allah is there to fulfill your wishes for sure.
yeah. I also want to give a few other examples. So like I've had friends who've been through divorces, and when I look at them, it's interesting because when I compare them from before their divorce and after their divorce, I see that they're two different people.
Wow.
And they've changed for the better, and they kept their faith, and they were able to get stronger from it. And it's funny because I messaged one of them, and now she's married, she has children, alhamdulillah, and I messaged one of her, and I was like, you know what, I look up to you. You're my role model. And I'm sure this took her by surprise, but like for me, like people who go through very difficult things in their life, yet they come out of it stronger, it's so honorable.
Yeah.
It's so honorable, and I think we should take those examples in our life, and these type of people exist all over. Even non-Muslims, you'll see like they have people who have gone through a lot of hardships, yet they still are able to achieve success later on. Also, I also had a friend who went through an accident, and then in that accident, she lost her mom, and she ended up being in the hospital like for a year. And so it had hurt her body, and there was a lot of permanent damages done, but she was able to grow from it so much. And so when I look up to her, I also say like, you're my example because you've grown so much stronger than you were before, and it's amazing to see that. I think these are just blessings that you were able to have people around you like that, and I'm sure we all know people like this, right?
Yes.
And definitely, it's something to look up to and to say like, okay, like, this person's done it, so can I. My hardship's probably not as hard as that person's hardship, or the person who's been through a divorce, or whatever, right? So we can look up and be like, okay, like I don't have it that bad, like this, I can do this, right? So it's sometimes getting encouragement from other people and saying like, okay, we can do this. Now, I also want to add to that. Sometimes I remember that I had like this relative of ours who she ended up, her child needed surgery, heart surgery.
Yeah.
And I remember someone else in our family, when our relatives had said, oh, it's because you do this sin.
Okay.
And she was blaming it on
the sin of her, that's because of that God is giving you hardship. Yeah.
And I remember talking to, like, I was talking to my akhlaq teacher, and she was saying that this is haram to do. To accuse
someone,
a hardship,
yeah.
to say this hardship has happened because of a sin.
Sin, yeah.
You don't know, we don't know. And,
yeah.
Even for ourselves, like you'll never, unless like a person's at a higher spiritual status where they know for sure. But normally for people like us, we don't know. It's haram for us to accuse. This is happening because you did that.
Yeah.
You don't know. It could be, but it might not be as well.
Yeah.
And so it's important to keep that in mind, and that so that we don't hurt each other.
Don't blame people because of your sin, because everyone has sins in their world, in their life. So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that I have created you out of hardship.
Yeah.
And no matter what, I'm going to give you hardship. So why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give this hardship to Imam Hussein and his family?
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
They were sinless people.
Yeah.
Right? So let's not blame anyone for anyone's hardship.
Definitely.
That's between them and God. That can be handled for sure.
And it's important to recognize, like, actually it's the people who are closer to Allah who actually have more hardships.
Yes, all the prophets were tested in a hard way.
And if anything, it was like our prophet, the Ahlul Bayt, who were tested the hardest.
Hardest way.
And so if you want to, that's actually that if we want to look at it from that status,
Yeah.
like it's like, okay, like no, it's based, actually the more hardships you go through, it actually means that Allah loves you more, most
Yes.
likely. You can't say it the opposite. And yes, sometimes things happen because we've sinned, but that in itself is a blessing.
Yeah.
Because Allah is trying to wake us up.
Yes,
And
definitely.
realize, that's Allah telling us, hey, Maryam, you committed that sin, God forbid. I'm like, inshallah, I haven't. But it's like,
God is trying to make
I'm
us
just
a better
giving my
person. Yes.
example. Let's
Yeah.
say, God forbid, I committed sin, and Allah does something to me in this world to make me realize,
You
okay,
really
there's
make
that.
a better person. Yeah.
But that in itself, if I take it and we're like, maybe this happened because I did this, and I fix that, that's
Yeah.
a blessing in itself. Because if, let's say, that did happen because of a sin I committed, well, that in a way, it's like a blessing because Allah's telling me, wake up, Maryam. This is your wake-up call. I want you to fix yourself and become a better person. And so that in itself is a mercy of Allah.
Yes, that
so
is.
with regardless of a trial being, or a difficulty being something that is meant for us to get closer to Allah, or if it's because of a sin that we committed, either of it's a blessing.
It's a blessing.
And it's a mercy from Allah. And so
Yes.
we need to have that perspective when we're dealing with
And we
trials and
definitely even have in hadith that Allah will test us in every 40 days. After 40 days, we will be tested with hardships and patience. The test. If he's not being tested, there is something wrong. So if there is a test coming up, that's very good for us. Actually, that's going to make us stronger. More better person.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so with that said, I want to get into the next point, and that is sabr. And so what would you define as sabr to be? Like, what do you understand?
Patience.
Patience.
Patience, like during the time of difficulties, definitely keep patience. Not. I don't mean be quiet. Be quiet in that way. Like whatever the situation is, understand your situation. For example, if your situation is with your health, the health definitely takes your your patience because of your health you become angry.
Yeah.
If how you're handling the situation, how you're handling the anger with your finances, when you lose your finances, definitely there's a fight between husband and wife, right? So how you're handling the situation, upbringing of kids, when the kids have become teenagers, how you're handling teenage kids, with anger or with your intelligence, with your patience. So how you are handling the situation is patience.
Yeah. So patience, when we're talking about sabr, patience is like a really not the best translation, because a lot of times people think, okay, when we say sabr or when we're saying patient, what we mean is like, okay, I'm going to wait here and I'm just going to do nothing.
Yeah.
And we're just going to just wait.
That's
And
actually a wrong example.
That's
yeah.
very, very a bad translation, and it's a bad way to think of it, because it actually means to be actively seeking our goal, but being patient at the same time, and like being steadfast in that path. That's what it means. And so, like, if you look at the story of Imam Hussein, it really mimics that. Is that like the Imam Hussein, the followers of Imam Hussein, the ladies especially, the family, his progeny, they especially because, and I stress especially the women of the camp and the children, because they endured a lot after the day of Ashura, right? Because they were prisoners, they were taken as captives, they weren't treated, and some of them lost their lives in between. There were children who lost lives. So I mean, what they went through was extremely hard, but they never
lost their will.
Their hope, and they never lost hope, and they never lost the will. They knew what they stood for. They stood for truth, and they wanted to stand.
They
for
never
anything.
retreated. Even the kids, I was so surprised. Every time when I listen about Karbala, this really surprises me a lot. Kids.
Yeah.
The kids, the kids who are thirsty, who are hungry, who are being whipped, the woman who was washing the kids dying. This is hard. I can't even think about it, And the kids are dying. They did not retreat. These are the women, these are the most powerful women that I ever heard of.
Yeah.
Because I'm a mother of two. I do understand what is it. I can't see my kids being hungry or thirsty, because I can see myself fasting, but I cannot hold it for my kids. That was the most. These are the courageous. This is like the power of a woman. Karbala reminds me of the power of the woman the entire time. So definitely the example that you're giving me is great.
Yeah, and so and especially in this world that we live in, everything's like everything is under our hands with the click of a button, right?
Yes.
We need something, we need food, we need groceries, we need something to buy, I don't know, a laptop, whatever, and we just go on Amazon and we click and it's here in a matter of hours, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever you want information, Google, like
Google,
Sheikh
yeah.
Google, right? Or if
Yeah.
it's just everything's become so like fast paced.
Globalization.
And
world.
globalization. If you
Yeah.
want to call someone, if you need to talk to someone, you call them, you text message. Everything's just so quick. And so we've kind of got into this habit of not being able to wait a bit and having a little bit being this steadfast.
You're talking about this lack of patience.
Lack of patience, exactly. And so it's because of this fast-paced world that we do have. And so it's funny too, because like if you ever been in an elevator, when the elevator doesn't come, people are like,
Yes,
like,
yes, it is.
and it's like,
it is annoying. Come on, let's
it's
go.
a machine. It's gonna take
Yeah.
a few seconds for it to move, right?
Yeah.
Especially here in Iran, like oh my God, it's interesting. You should see how sometimes it takes some time, but it's like, no, we need to learn to be a little bit. We have to wait a bit. Like we can't expect everything to be like, and especially when it comes to long-term projects, when it comes to Islamic projects, when it comes to raising children.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you know this better than I do. It takes a lot of patience. It's not something that you're going to achieve results within like days. Sometimes
Yeah.
it takes years to end up to get somewhere.
So basically, thank you so much, Sister Mariam. We are out of time right now. We have to continue this topic in the next
Inshallah.
episode, inshallah. And thank you very much, everyone, for being part of this program. So stay tuned for other points. We will be discussing other points. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.